What we're going to be talking about right now is we're going to talk about different watercolor paint techniques. We are just going to be talking about them. And after you have learned all about some different watercolor techniques, you can then start to apply these techniques to your gesture drawing. So please just sit, watch, and listen. The first technique that we're going to be learning about is the wet on wet watercolor technique. So this is when you take your paintbrush, you put a little bit of water down on your paper, and then you're going to get some more water and put it on the paint palette. You can then start to apply the paint. As you can see, the paint actually spreads because the water that's on the paper also spreads. It creates a very cool design and a very cool look. So it's a really nice way to add color onto certain aspects of your paper. I'm going to be doing another technique now, and this is the wet on dry. So my paper is completely dry, and I'm making sure that my paint on my paint palette is very wet because I put a lot of water on it. And all I'm doing is I'm just starting to apply the paint evenly across the dry paper. So this is another nice technique that you can fill your paper with. It makes it very bright. Obviously, the more color that you add, the darker your color will be. The less color that you add, the lighter color your color will be. Another technique that we're going to be doing is the dry brush technique. So this is when my paintbrush is pretty dry. I have a little bit of a little bit of water on my yellow paint. And what I'm doing is I'm just brushing the paint that is somewhat dry, my paintbrush is very dry, onto my paper, and I'm creating this almost streakiness technique. This is a technique you can use as well. It obviously doesn't have great coverage like the wet on dry technique, but it still creates a very cool look on your paper. The next watercolor technique we're going to be doing or talking about is the gradient watercolor technique. Okay, so what we do here is we take a paintbrush or our paintbrush and we start to apply some paint on top of our wherever we're painting. And what you can do is you can start to then add more water onto the bottom of wherever you're painting. And it creates this darker to lighter effect with your paintbrush. So it's almost like an ombre effect it's creating because it's dark on the top and then slowly getting to a lighter greenish color. You can do this with any color, obviously. The more paint that you apply on the top, and then the less paint that you apply on the bottom is going to make it look more dramatic. Sometimes I even take my finger or a paper towel and I'll start to dab away some of that extra paint so that it becomes more gradient. Okay. This is a nice technique as well. It can create some definition and some lights and darks into your painting, which is super fun. As I said, it's really important for these watercolor techniques that you do have a paper towel with you because it just helps with, if you make a tiny mistake, you can always just take your paper towel and dab it on the spot that you want less coverage or less color. So anyway, I'm just trying to play around, making it as smooth as possible. Obviously, it's going to look a little bit blotchy when it's wet, but then as it dries, it will become this really nice gradient effect where it goes from dark green to lighter green. You can even add some some white down there to kind of make it a little bit less of the color green that I'm working with. But it's just a nice effect, as I said, in a lot of our paintings. Our next technique that we're going to be using, I'm going to be doing it twice. It's called the varied color watercolor technique. Okay. So this is and you could do this two separate ways. You can do it by putting water down on your paper first and then applying the paint. And then the reason why it's called varied is because you're actually applying two colors to kind of morph into one another. And this creates a really nice effect too. It's almost like a tie-dye effect. It looks really nice when you pick colors that are very close to one another. So like, for example, red and orange, when they mix together, they're not going to make like a brown or a dark black, which is good. Same with purple and blue. You want to choose colors that when they mix together, they don't turn into like a greenish brown color, unless that's the color you're looking for. It's really up to you. But yeah, these are a few techniques that I just wanted to show you all. We're going to take a look now at how Miss Parlow starts to paint her gesture drawing using some of these techniques. So, what you will need in order to obviously paint your gesture drawing is you'll need a watercolor palette. You'll also need a paintbrush and a water cup. Remember, there are a lot of different techniques you can use. You can always rewind this video and check out all the different techniques that I've showed you that you can use to apply color to your artwork. Remember, I want this to be like really fun and exciting and a colorful piece. So you can choose any colors you want. You can color the background of your drawing. You can color you can paint the figures in your drawing. It really is up to you how you want to design this. Make it fun, make it vibrant. Think about what gesture drawing is. Gesture drawing is when we take dynamic poses of our figures and create these really dynamic poses that have a lot of movement. So maybe create different types of movement with your paint in the background on top of your gesture drawings. It's really up to you how you want to apply the paint and what colors you want to use. I'm going to be using a very varied a lot of colors because I just want to make it as bright as possible. Remember, watercolor paint, it does take a little bit of a while to dry, so you can always play around with the paint after it's applied, adding more water, adding more color, dabbing it with a paper towel always helps me as well. So it depends on how you want this to look. As I said, the different techniques that I showed you in the beginning of this video can also create some really cool effects on your painting. So I hope you enjoyed my little technique video. Let's take a look at how Miss Parlow starts to apply some more colors to her drawing.